What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a whole bunch of upgrades from Evil Energy that we're gonna get installed on the Turbo Civic. We've got a whole fuel system from them, and I am super excited to get this stuff installed. Now, if you go back on the Honda playlist, we do have a few videos where we've modified the stock fuel system. We did an in-tank pump, we've done an AEM fuel rail, and a set of injectors. But other than that, this fuel system has been completely stock. So these are some much needed upgrades that Evil Energy got sent out to us, and I'm super excited to get these things installed. So let's get through the intro. We'll take a look at what we're working with today, and then we will start building this fuel system. Now that we've gotten through the intro, let's take a look at some of these awesome new parts that Evil Energy got sent out for us. So I've got the whole kit that Evil Energy sent out to us laid out here. Now, if you guys want this exact kit, you can go on their website and they have an LS Swap EFI kit. We decided to go with the PTFE version, and the line looks extremely nice. It's got that nice liner so that everything here is E85 safe, because we might be putting this car on E85 here in the near future. So you've got the nice nylon and steel braided PTFE line. Looks really good, and I think it's going to work out great for us. They sent us a whole bunch of different fittings to cover pretty much everything that we're going to need today. We did decide to go 6AN with this car because I think it's going to be plenty for the power that this built D16 is going to be capable of making. Now, the thing I'm most excited about is this fuel pressure regulator kit. Now, it seems to be a really nice kit, comes with a gauge and everything, and it's going to look really nice in the engine bay. So far, I've been extremely happy with how all of these parts feel in your hand. Now, next to it, we have their 40 micron steel fuel filter. So this is like a stainless steel mesh, so you can go ahead, pop it out, clean it as needed. Now, we do have a sock on the pump that's in the tank, so I think between those two, that's going to be perfectly fine for us. Now, they also sent us out a really nice inline 300 liter per hour pump. Again, has some heft to it, has some really nice fittings that can go into this thing. ORB, I believe it goes either 10 or 12 ORB, so has potential to flow quite a bit. And then you've got your 6AN feed on this side. Comes with this mount right here. Once again, really nice piece. Now, I'm not sure if we're going to be using their pump today, just because the simple fact that this tank already has some damage, and I don't want to go through putting a bulkhead to feed that pump. We might do it in the future with another tank, or we'll save that pump and definitely be using it on a project here in the near future. So that's all the stuff that Evil Energy sent out to us. It all looks like really nice stuff. If you guys want to buy anything from them, we have a discount code for you guys. It is B2B. You can use that at checkout to save yourself some money on any of Evil Energy products. So the first thing that we're going to do is I've got to get the back seat pulled out so that we can start hooking in to the fuel pump hat, so that we can get a feed line ran up to the engine bay to our fuel rail, then the regulator, and then we can start aiming back towards the tank. So we've got a whole bunch of work ahead of us, so let's dive right in and get to work. We're going to go ahead and get this thing pulled up on the lift so it's easier to run our fuel lines. Now that we've got this thing up on our quick lift here, the first thing that we're going to do is pull the back seat out so that we can get access to the top of the fuel pump. So there's a 10mm bolt that goes right here that we already went ahead and popped out. And then we're just going to flip these seats back up, go ahead and unclip that seat, and it'll pull right out. Now that we've got the back seat out, we can go ahead and take off this cover plate. You've just got some Phillips head screws. We'll get this thing popped up out of our way, and then we can access the fuel pump. And there we have our fuel pump. So we'll go ahead and get this out of our way, clean it up, and then before we go ahead taking this apart, I'm gonna use the Honda to help us get some fuel out of this thing so we don't make a mess. So what I'm gonna do here is carefully loosen up the fitting that we have up here at the fuel rail. This is gonna have to come out anyways. So we'll go ahead and get this loosened up. This is our factory feed line. And now we can put that into a jug, and I'll show you guys how we're gonna run the pump. We've got a little gallon milk jug there to try to catch some of the fuel because I have to cycle the key for a second, and then we'll use Honda to command the pump on. So in Honda here, we can go ahead and go to online, and then you can go down to test outputs. And then one of the options is fuel pump, test fuel pump / drain fuel tank. So we're gonna go ahead and utilize that to pump some fuel into this jug and then dump it into gas cans. We'll take a few gallons out of it, and then we should have plenty of room to work in the tank without making a mess. Go ahead and all right, we can dump this gallon out. I'm gonna do that a couple more times just to make sure we got plenty of extra room in that tank. Now that we've got the tank drained, I'm gonna go ahead and unplug some of this stuff so we can get it out of our way. If you guys need to know how to wire a relay for your bigger fuel pump, you can go back on the Honda playlist when we did the 450 in-tank pump on this car. That's why we're not gonna mess with the pump much today, just make some lines for it and get a nice new regulator installed. But we can go ahead and get that out of our way for now. Might go ahead and get this one undone too, out of our way. And then these are the two lines that we need to work with today. This is gonna be our feed line, and then this is gonna be our return line. Now, thanks to Evil Energy, we have a very nice quick connect to 6AN fitting that we can use for our feed. Still need to decide what we wanna do for our return. If we wanna do a bulkhead, drill into the hat and dump it in the tank. Not positive yet, but we'll decide that when we get there. We've got a whole lot of line to make before we get to that point. So let's go ahead and get this feed line off. We'll test fit our quick connect, and then we can start making a line from here up to the engine bay. So this factory one's pretty easy. You just squeeze the two tabs, and then the line will pull off just like so. Just like that. Get that out of our way. Set this off to the side. We've got a new one from Evil Energy right here. And then our new fitting, I can go ahead and put this clip on where it belongs. And then when we're ready, this line will clip right into place. Just like so. All right, now we need some line and some fittings, see what angle is gonna work best for us, and we can start running this down. So now that we're down here under the car, sorry for any background noise, I've got a fan going, it's like 94% humidity today, kind of sucks. But I sent a test piece of PTFE line down just to make sure it was gonna be able to route and run how we want it. We've got that right here. We've got the old factory lines here. As you can see, we had to do a quick repair one day on them, so I just used some rubber line and hose clamps, but we're gonna get rid of all that with our nice new kit. So, gotta undo a couple bolts to get access to it. We'll start getting all of the old stuff down and out of our way, and then we can start measuring and running our new PTFE line to the length we need it before we cut and start putting some fittings on. All right, got that old piece out. So now that we started taking out the old factory feed line, I'm gonna do the same thing with the stock filter. I'm just gonna go ahead, I got this broken free here. We're just gonna take this line out, and then we can go ahead and get the filter right out of our way. All right, we can throw this stock filter off to the side. Since we're gonna be using our nice new Evil Energy fuel pressure regulator, we have no use for this factory one. So we're gonna get it unbolted from the rail, disconnect the return line, throw this thing in the garbage, and cap that hole. All right, now we can cap that hole. I believe the AEM rail takes an 1/8 inch NPT bung. So I went ahead and used some of my blue thread sealant paste on this plug, and we're gonna go ahead and get it into the AEM fuel rail, get this old return port plugged off. Since we're already over here, we might as well go ahead and get our fuel rail fitting switched out. We're going to be going to a 6 AN on both sides. So I've got my adjustable AN wrench here. We'll pop this free, just like so. And as you guys can see, this AEM fuel rail uses a crush washer, or you can also use ORB. ORB fittings are O-ring boss fittings, so the O-ring is actually recessed inside here. That's what we're going to be switching to. Like I said, this one's been using a crush washer and it's been completely fine, but the rail is also machined for ORB, and that's what we're going to be using. So this is what an ORB fitting looks like. This is ORB to 6 AN. The O-ring sits right along here, and it's actually going to recess inside the fuel rail. All of the Evil Energy pieces are this same way. Now, you don't want to use any thread tape or sealant on an ORB fitting. You just want to rely on that O-ring. Now, what I like to do is I take just a little bit of Vaseline or a petroleum jelly type thing and just put a little bit on that O-ring to make sure that it seats good and doesn't get ripped or torn. So we'll put a little bit of that on real quick. We don't want much at all, literally just a tiny bit on the O-ring itself. This isn't necessarily for sealing purposes, this is just to keep it from ripping on assembly. Now we'll just lightly tighten these down. You don't need to go super crazy, we just need to snug any of the ORB fittings. Just like so. I went ahead and threw our new ORB fitting on this side as well. So now the fuel rail is good to go. Now we can finally start making some lines and getting this thing all plumbed in. So we are ready to make our first PTFE line for the Turbo Civic here. So we've got our package opened up, and as we can see, we have a 6 AN PTFE straight fitting. Now I'm gonna run through this pretty quickly because I do have a detailed video on the channel of the difference between AN and PTFE and how to assemble both. But just a quick breakdown, you have the nut, you have the fitting itself, and then you have the ferrule. So I'm going to show you guys how to throw one of these together. I apologize for the background noise. We do have the AC running. It is brutal outside. So we've got our line here, and as you guys can see, there is a liner inside the PTFE line. That helps make it so that it is E85 compatible. So the first thing that we're going to do here is take and set our ferrule aside and the fitting body aside. And we're going to take the nut, and if I can get it on there with the tape still on there. I didn't cut this yet because it was already cut from the factory, so we don't need to yet. But I'm gonna go ahead and force the nut onto the line, just like so. Now we can go ahead and peel our tape. And I always wrap them in tape just like this when you're gonna make a cut, and you want it to be nice, straight, and true. Now you're gonna wanna pick or a little tiny screwdriver or something along those lines. I also have a special tool here. And you're gonna wanna kind of flare out the stainless steel braid without damaging the plastic liner. So as you guys can see, this tool is cut specifically for that, to help flare that out without hurting the line. Go ahead and put that back on there. Need to flare it out decently, not crazy, but just decently like that without hurting the line. Now as you guys can see, we've got that flared out. Make sure there's no damage to the inner liner here. Now we're gonna take our ferrule, and we're gonna wanna place that onto the line just like so. You can push this up against something hard to help keep it nice and flat. You want that to bottom out. There is a little lip down inside there, and we want that to sit flush with the line itself. You can also use this tool here, it'll help you push. Like I said, there's a little step down in there you guys will see, and you wanna just make sure that the plastic liner is flush up against that all the way around. Now once it is, we can go ahead and slide the nut up. Just like so, and we can take the other end, the body of the fitting here. We're gonna wanna insert that into the ferrule and the line. You can use a little bit of WD-40 to help you guys do this part. You can take a little dab of WD-40 if you want and put it on the fitting itself. Once you get a little bit of WD-40 on the body of the fitting, we can go ahead and start inserting that into the plastic liner, just like so. And then you're gonna wanna push these two together as you start to tighten the nut, just like so. And then we can go ahead and put this in our soft jaws and get this tightened down. Now they make different wrenches. You can either use a normal style aluminum wrench, or you can use one of the adjustable ones. So we're just gonna start tightening this down. Now if you have a bigger vise, it's obviously better, but I'm trying to use this little one so that you guys can see it here. But we're just gonna keep tightening this down until it bottoms out against that nut. And then I like to try to line up the flats on the fittings just so they look good. And that one's nice and snug. We can take it out of the jaws. And we've got ourselves a nice fitting. Now if you really want to be fancy, you can use heat shrink down here. Put a little piece of heat shrink over that, but I leave them just like they are. Nice looking fitting. That hose actually went together extremely well. So far, I'm really liking this Evil Energy line. So let's go ahead, get this hooked up. We can run it up to where we're gonna be putting our fuel filter, cut it to length, and make some more ends. So we've got our AN line connected to our quick connect, and now we can run it under the car, start routing it, and figure out the length. Let's take a closer look at this fuel filter kit that they sent out to us. It actually seems to be a really nice piece. So you've got the filter and housing itself right here, which is really nice. Excuse the fingerprints, my dirty mitts have been all over it. But it also comes with this very nice mount for it that's insulated with rubber, with some nice mounting holes. This thing's actually a really good looking piece. Sadly, I think we're gonna have to modify the bracket, but it's nice that they give you 2 tabs to mount to. Really good looking piece. Now I did go ahead and loosen up the housing itself because I just wanted to take this thing apart quick and take a look inside. So if we go ahead and unthread this, it's got a spring in there. Nice clean little housing. And then it's got this stainless steel mesh filter, which I actually really like. And then the filter actually comes off if you're careful with it, just like so that you can clean this thing out really good. It's got a spring inside there. All the way around, really nice looking piece. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thrown back together. It did come with a bunch of different fittings. I believe there's 6 right here. There's 6 AN, and then it looks like maybe 8 AN and 10 AN, so that's awesome. So really happy with that. Let's go ahead, get this thing put back together, and we've got to make a line to go from this to the tank. So as you guys seen, we got our new PTFE line hooked up at the tank to our quick connect. I decided to run it down along here with some of the other lines, and I took our fuel filter and just have it set up in place about where it's going to be. Use some yellow painter's tape to wrap our line, made a mark. Now we can head in the garage, cut it, put an end on it, and get this thing mounted. Now that we've got both ends on our first line, I want to show you guys a very important part of this process that a lot of people overlook, and that is flushing the lines out. You get a lot of debris in here from making them and from when they're sitting on the shelf or during the manufacturing process. You get all kinds of little things through these lines, and it's just a really good idea to flush them out. So we have a little kit here that I bought online, and it lets us hook it right up to a garden hose. Now there's a couple cool things about this. A, we can hook it up and use the pressure from the garden hose to flush these out, make sure we get any debris out. But we can also go ahead and put a cap in one end and then go ahead and pressure check these, make sure we don't have any leaks, so that if we do, we can address it now. So I'm gonna head outside real quick, we'll get this one flush and then test it, make sure we don't have any leaks. Go ahead and pressurize it. That's how much fuel you could flow out of a 6 AN line. That's quite a bit of fuel for a 6 AN. So I'm gonna go ahead, shut this down. Looks like the line is good. I don't see any leaks in the line itself, but I'm gonna go ahead and put a plug in it in the end here and just make sure that we don't have any leaks. Let's go ahead and give it a little pressure. Of course, the GoPro just overheated, but we don't have any leaks on our line, so we're doing good. We're ready to slap this one on the car and build the next one. Now that we've got a line made going from our fuel tank to our fuel filter, we can go ahead and make the line to go from our fuel filter up to our fuel rail. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing that we've been doing and get this one made. All right, we've got the next line made. This one's gonna go from the fuel filter up to the rail. So let's slap our fuel filter in and get this line ran so we can cut it and put another end on it. So I went ahead and got the line we finished up and leak tested, ran up to the tank. We didn't tighten it up, but we did get it started. So we've got that on there. We've got this line ran about to where our fuel filter is. And as you guys can see, I found a bolt on the floor here. So I went ahead and used it for the mount for our fuel filter. I did have to cut off one of the legs so that it would fit in here. I was trying to get it as close up to the floor as possible since our exhaust is the lowest point right now. But as you can see, we've got that mounted. So now we can go ahead and grab our fuel filter. Make sure that the arrow on your fuel filter is going the proper way. You want the arrow going with flow, so ours is gonna go in like this. We'll get that thrown up in here. And then we can tighten the Allen head bolt down. So I snaked this line down with the fitting that we just assembled and threaded it onto our fuel filter. And it looks like we're gonna have to go ahead and mark it right about here and cut it for a 90 going into the fuel rail. So I'll get that marked, we'll bring it inside and get this one made. So this one needs a 90 degree, so we'll get one of those opened up. Gonna do the same thing we did with the straights, just this one's a 90. We're gonna put this one in the real vise. Makes it much easier when it's in a real vise. We've got this line made. We can bring it out to the car, set it on, test fit it, and then we can start mounting the fuel pressure regulator so we can run lines to that. I flush and leak test every line that I make. So we'll go ahead and test this one. All right, we've got that one flush. Let's go ahead, cap it, and test it for leaks. I think our line's good to go. Let's go ahead, drain this one, blow it out, and we'll put this one on so we can build the next one. Came right down here through the opening, and then ran it all the way back to the fuel filter we mounted. Ignore all these low-hanging lines. We're gonna do something with those later. But we've got everything ran from the tank to the filter, filter to rail. Now we just need to go to the fuel pressure regulator and then back to the tank. As you guys seen yesterday, we got our feed line ran all the way up to the rail. I've got our new regulator here because now we need to go from the rail to the regulator. So we made a mark on the firewall up here by the windshield cowling, and I think we're gonna go somewhere right about like that. It should give us plenty of room. Since we're not needing to use this fitting, we're just gonna plug it off, and then we'll have the line from the rail into here, and then this will return back to the tank. So we're gonna put it something just like that. We're gonna use some nutserts. So we'll drill this out and use a nutsert or a riv nut, get that put in there, and then we can tighten this thing down and start making some lines. All right, so we've got our first riv nut in. I'm gonna put the regulator on it real quick. We'll mark our next one and get that one drilled. It's gonna sit something kind of like that. Just gonna eyeball it level. We'll mark for our next hole and get that one drilled. You wanna try to keep these things as straight and level as possible, but sometimes it's just not in the cards. So we're gonna do what we can here. All right, the regulator is good and mounted. Now we can throw the gauge on it, some fittings in it, and start getting the lines made. So as you guys can see, we are back in the car, and that's because we're gonna start working on our return side of the fuel system. The way we're gonna go about doing this is utilizing another nice piece from Evil Energy. This is a 6AN bulkhead fitting. Now we're gonna drill a hole in our fuel hat, put this in there, and then run a 90 to it from the return of the regulator, and it'll dump fuel right back into the tank. Now, if you're worried about fuel aeration, you can put a hose on here like you would use on a fuel pump that is safe and won't degrade in fuel or ethanol. Whichever fuel you're gonna use, make sure it's safe for that. and it'll dump it into the fuel so that it's not just splashing in there. Not positive what we're gonna do there yet until we get in there and see what we need and if we have it. But this bulkhead fitting is gonna make our life a lot easier. So first thing we need to do is get the fuel pump assembly out so that we can work with this fuel hat and get our bulkhead fitting installed. We got that hose pulled off, and now we can get our new quick connect fitting disconnected here for our feed line, and then start undoing the bolts to get the fuel hat and pump out of there. I'm gonna go ahead and break all of these free in a crisscross pattern. Now it's always a good idea if you're gonna be doing work in here to vacuum around this to get any debris out. I vacuumed around it when we were in here recently, so ours isn't that dirty, but we might go ahead and hit it again real quick, and then we can pull this whole assembly right up and out of here. I have a tray right over here. We can set this in, let it dry a minute, and then we'll see how we want to tackle this. So looking at this fuel pump hat, I thought we were gonna have plenty of room for that bulkhead fitting. Sadly, we do not. When you flip it over, we only have up to right here because that's where it starts to seal. So what we're gonna have to do is cut some of this bracket out, cut this return line out, and then on this side, cut this return line here, and also probably shave some of that bracket off. It's a little bit more work than I was hoping for, but I think it's doable. So we'll get the Dremel out and a die grinder and start making some room so that we can get this bulkhead fitting in. I went ahead and rinsed this carefully with water to make sure that we diluted any fuel that was left on it. We also let it dry for a while before I did that. But like I said, I'm gonna go in here and as carefully as I possibly can, I'm gonna try to cut this bracket out and this line. We're gonna start on the bottom so that if worst case, we can still try to figure out to do something up top. But I think we're gonna be able to get it. Just gonna notch it, and come this way. I'm gonna try doing it with this Dremel. If it doesn't work, we'll step up to a die grinder. I just think we'll have a little bit more control with this thing. So let's give it a shot.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
So this is what we've got so far. Got it cleaned up on the bottom decent. Working on it still up top. I'm gonna wait to clean it up here until we get this drilled out. But this has been kind of a pain part of this process. I was hoping we'd have plenty of room, but looks like we got it cleaned up and pretty flat. So I'm gonna get that drilled out next, and then we'll do some final touches, notch this if we need to, and get this fitting in there. Grabbed a new bit I had on the shelf, so we'll give this one a try, see if it does any better. Perfect. All right, guys, that one looks perfect, and it actually doesn't even look like we're gonna have to notch that at all. As long as our O-rings are good, we'll just clean up the bottom, clean up the top, and tighten this thing down. Now we've got this thing all cleaned up and ready to go. We've got our fitting here, and I'm just gonna test fit it one more time, just like so. And it's pretty cleaned up. I think it's gonna work out just fine with the washers that comes with this. It should seal it up. So we'll go ahead and get it thrown together so we can put this back in the car and start building our line. We're good to go. We can start putting our pump back down in the tank. Careful not to pinch or scrape any wires. Now that we've got our fuel pump back in, we can make a line to go from our bulkhead fitting up to the regulator. I have to say, guys, this line has been extremely easy to work with. If you've never done AN lines or other PTFE lines, This is actually a treat. This is extremely easy, and I've been extremely happy working on them. I'm not just saying that because they sent it. I've done many lines. You guys can go back on the channel and check it out and see how some other lines have fought me. These ones go together extremely easy for what they are, and I actually enjoy using them. We can go ahead and get our ferrule pushed on. All right, this one's good to go. Let's get it on the tank. It's a little bit higher than I wanted it to be, but there's really not much I could do unless I would have gotten a 90-degree bulkhead, but I didn't think I had enough for that, so this is what we've got. But I think it's gonna do the job just fine. If anything, I'll just dent this little cover plate just a little bit. The whole underside of the seat is foam, so I'm not really worried about that. I just don't want to bolt that cover down on this and have a bunch of tension on that bulkhead fitting. So we'll go ahead and run this up to the front, measure it. We'll have to pop it back out to cut it and put another end on it. And then we can hook this up to the regulator. So we went ahead and ran our return line. We've got it pretty eyeballed here. The regulator is gonna be right there. So we're gonna pull this thing back out, cut it here, put an end on it, and then we should be good to go with our return line. So we've got our new return line made. We just pressure checked it. I'm gonna go ahead and get it fed down through here. You guys aren't gonna be able to see anything anyways. I can't even see anything. I just kind of feed it down in there and then pull it tight from down underneath, make sure it's not rubbing anything. But we'll get that fed in there, and then we can finally tighten up this fitting to our quick connect, then start running them for the final time to the front. All right, so we're gonna go ahead, get this one tightened up. You should always use your aluminum soft wrenches on AN fittings if you don't wanna mar them up, but no one's gonna see this one, and it's just a tight spot, so I'm gonna use 2 normal wrenches. That one's nice and tight. All right, I think we've got that tight enough. Let's go ahead and move under the car. We've got to get the lines ran up to the front and we can start hooking them up. So the only thing on this fuel system that I'm gonna use the tape on is the pressure gauge, and that's just because they were very specific about it. They want you to use tape on it, so that's what we're gonna do. So we'll go ahead and wrap it. Always pay attention to the direction that you're using this thread tape in, because you want it so that the piece that you rip off doesn't get all bunched up when you go to start the threads. Let's go ahead and get this thing threaded in. Now make sure to keep in mind the orientation that your pressure regulator is going to be sitting in, because you're going to want your gauge so that you can read it easily, obviously, from wherever it's sitting. So just keep that in mind when you're tightening this up. I'd rather go a little bit under because you can crank it tighter a little bit, but I would not recommend backing it off to get the gauge straight. So we'll leave it like that for now, and then we can tighten it just a touch more once it's on the car if it needs to. Now we can go ahead and throw our fittings in. Like I mentioned earlier, I like to use just the tiniest bit of Vaseline on ORB fittings, so we're going to do the same thing here. So we'll go ahead and snug those up. We don't need to go crazy tight with these like we did with the pipe thread stuff. These just need to be snugged, just like so. And now this thing's good to go. We can go finish mount it on the car. All right guys, so we've got our return line ran all the way up here. I didn't bother showing you under the car again just because you can't see and I can barely see. So we're gonna go ahead and get the return line tightened on to our regulator before we even bother hooking it up. or bolting it up, I should say, to the firewall, just because it's easier to get to. So let's go ahead, grab a wrench, we'll get this tightened up, and then we can mount this thing. Sure, you guys can't see nothing right now, but take my word for it, I'm tightening up the return line on the regulator. Snug it, and we're good there for now. The return line is on. This is tight, this is tight. Now we just need to make a line from here over to the rail right here, and we will be just about ready to pressure check this thing. All right guys, so it's time to make our last fuel line. So we need to go from the fuel rail to our pressure regulator. Now I'd like to use a 90 here and then come around into the regulator, but of course I forgot to order a 90. I have another one on the way, but it's not going to be here today, and I want to try to see if this thing has any leaks or anything like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a straight, and I'm going to loop it out and around into another straight since I have enough of those. And this way we can at least pressure check everything, make sure we have no leaks, and set our base fuel pressure and all that stuff. So super excited to see this thing come together. I am going to leave this line a little bit on the long side so that if I want to, if I'm not happy with it, I can come back and just cut the same line back a little bit and add a 90 in. So let's go ahead and get this line made, and we will finally be ready to pressure check this thing. So I went ahead and threw this end on real quick, and then I just looped it over and then under our charge pipe, and we're gonna come up straight into the rail for now. Like I said, I think I'm gonna leave this a little long so that once my 90s come in at a later date, I can just go ahead, cut this same line down a little bit, and we'll do a 90 here, and I think a 90 will work up there, and it'll be much cleaner just right under the manifold and you won't even see it. But for now and for today, this is gonna work perfectly fine and get the job done. So let's go ahead, get that marked. We'll go in there and make our last fitting. Every time I do this, it really impresses me how much fuel a 6 AM line can flow. All right, let's cap it off and see if we have any leaks. All right, let's go ahead and get this line thrown on. Like I said, ideally I'd have two 90s, one on each. But for right this second, we're gonna make this work. So let's go ahead and get this one on. Doesn't look completely hateful, just doesn't look professional. So let's go ahead and get those tightened up. I will make sure we got everything else tight, and then we can finally hit the key or use the computer to kick on the pump and check for leaks. Go ahead and hook the battery back up. Good enough for now. Now that I've got the battery reconnected, I'm gonna go ahead and hit the key. The pump will prime for 3 seconds the way I have it set up in the tune. So that should tell us if we have any major leaks spraying all over the place. If everything looks good after that, we'll grab the laptop, engage the pump manually with the tune, and we will see if this thing will build some pressure. All right, we're gonna go ahead and hit the key, see if we have any leaks. Like I said, the pump will run for 3 seconds. So it's not gonna run a crazy long time, but should tell us if we have any major issues. So let's go ahead and hit the key. I'm gonna have you guys watch back here and the engine bay for me, see if we have any leaks. So just like before when we were draining the tank at the beginning of the video, I'm gonna go in Hondata under test outputs. We're gonna go to test fuel pump / drain tank, and I'm just gonna bump that button a few times, let the pump kick on, cycle, I'll turn it back off a second, check for any major leaks, and then we will look over the car. All right, let's take a look around. I heard the air pump out of the system, so let's look around, see if anything's leaking. I don't see anything as of right this second. Let's look in the back seat, make sure those fittings are good. I can't see back there. What do you guys think? Do those look good? All right, let's go ahead and hit the pump again. Let's go ahead and bump the pump again. I'll let it run a little bit longer and see if we see any leaks. Looks like our regulator's only set for about 25 PSI right now. We're gonna go ahead and bump that up a little bit. Not sure if you guys can see it, but the regulator's on 25 PSI, so I'm gonna grab a wrench and an Allen wrench, and we will go ahead and bump that up. Probably gonna run it closer to 40 PSI for now. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and set our base pressure. Like I said, I'm gonna go for about 40 PSI for now. So let's go ahead and kick the pump on. We'll recheck this with the engine running and the vacuum line disconnected. So let's go ahead and run the pump. Pretty easy to do with this nice regulator. So you just take your wrench, you're gonna break the jam nut free, just like so, and then you simply just turn this to bump up or down the fuel pressure. Not sure how well you guys can see it, but that's about 35. We're gonna stop right around 40. So that's set at 40 now. I'm gonna go ahead and lock this jam nut back up. We've got this thing set at 40 PSI. I don't see any leaks. Let that pump run for another second or two here. Look under it, look in the back seat. Sounds really good. Everything looks really good. All right, guys, I've been letting this thing run here for a while at 40 PSI, and everything looks really good. I don't see any leaks, not a one. And yes, this really is the first time that we kicked it on. I always show you guys when I fail. It's been plenty of times on the channel where you have seen me fail, but we got it done. I don't see any leaks. I'm super happy about that. We do still have to zip tie up all the lines, and if my fittings come in time, I'll go ahead and make that upper line from the rail to the regulator. But I am absolutely cooked. It has been ridiculously hot out here today, and now the bugs are getting me. So I'm gonna go ahead, close up the laptop, close up the car, and call it a night. I just wanted to give you guys a quick look at the finished product. We got our lines all zip tied up and out of the way, and then we've got our fuel filter mounted right here. Looks really good. I'm super happy with it. I like that mount a lot and that it's insulated with some rubber. And then our lines continue to run up along here, and then they go right up into the engine bay, nice and tucked up out of the way. Super happy with it. Got as much ground clearance as we possibly could. So while I was editing this video today, the two 90-degree fittings I needed showed up. So I went ahead, got them slapped on a line, and got it slapped on the car. And it looks so much better. Looks way cleaner with the 90 out of the rail, up into the regulator. No more big ugly loop. I'm super happy with how that turned out. The fuel system on this thing is looking really good. So the only thing left to do is to fire it up, make sure everything's good, and this thing is dialed. Let's hit the key and see what happens. I don't see any leaks, guys. That's awesome. We definitely need to do some tuning, adjust the fuel pressure. I'm not sure what it used to be, but we'll get it adjusted. It runs. Hell yeah, guys, she runs. It definitely needs some tuning adjustments because I don't know what the fuel pressure was, and we set it at a base pressure with our new adjustable regulator, but it is running. Super happy, no leaks. This system worked out really good for us. I'm super excited to be able to turn the fuel pressure up if we need to get a little bit more out of these injectors if we switch over to E85. But as always, I appreciate you guys for checking out the channel. I hope today's video could help you guys out in some way, shape, or form. Don't forget to go check out Evil Energy and use our code B2B to save yourself some money at checkout. As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and check us out on all of our other social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, and Bought to Build Official on Instagram. And we will catch you on the next one.